Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Lethbridge Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh addressed the allegations from Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips about police targeting her. The next phase of Alberta's immunization program has begun. And pork producers directly impacted by the closure of the Olimo plant in Red Deer will be receiving some much-needed financial help.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The province announced funding for 14 new school projects. The Alberta government will be providing $268 million for school construction in the province, including a new elementary school for the west side of Lethbridge. Alberta Education Minister Adriana LaGrange says the UCP is following through on its commitment to making education a top priority.
Our total capital investment includes $2.1 billion over 3 years to maintain existing schools, work on previously announced projects, expand the modular program, and support new school projects. I am happy to report that there are 62 projects currently underway across the province, and we expect 19 of them to be completed through the 21-22 school year.
The new West Side School is anticipated to open by September of 2025 at the earliest. The Lethbridge School Division say they plan to have the new kindergarten through grade 5 school built in the Gary Station area off of 30th Street West. The school division says this is the funding they've been requesting from the province for the past 4 years.
This school has been our number one capital project priority for the past 4 years. And so it's just been so exciting to see today that the government of Alberta has heard our concerns and that our advocacy has paid off, and they are seeing the needs of the city of Lethbridge. And so to approve this new elementary school for the west side is great news for students, for families, and for our community. And so we know that there's going to be continued growth on the west side. So we dreamed bigger and we applied for a 900 student capacity school. That number hasn't been confirmed, but because we've been approved, we are hoping that that's the number that we've been approved for.
The school division says this new funding will not change the fact that they need to move ahead with boundary changes for the fall of 2021 due to the overcrowding of West Side schools. Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips is not happy. She spoke out at the legislature yesterday and alleges that not one or two, but 5 members of the Lethbridge Police Service did searches on her multiple times. She says the actions of the LPS no longer make her feel safe in her own community.
So here we have an MLA and a minister that's been photographed, a plan to follow her was hatched, her records were searched, false content about her was circulated by in-uniform police officers thousands of times, and who knows what else. I don't feel safe in my community. No wonder it's so hard to recruit women into politics. But I am not a victim. I was certainly a target by police officers who don't understand the basic lines of professional conduct. But I'll be fine. But I am going to see this through on behalf of all of the people who don't have the resources I have to improve the way law enforcement conducts itself.
Lethbridge Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh addressed those allegations made by MLA Shannon Phillips earlier today at the LPS. He says the investigation into the allegations is ongoing and has been turned over to the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team. The chief also acknowledged that trust has been broken between the LPS and the community.
I just want to assure the community, the citizens, that we are doing whatever we can to make sure we're holding people accountable. And again, we continue to do what we can to rebuild the trust with the community. But the public here too, and I'm meeting them every day. I've got a relationship in the community. I don't believe that every citizen here is distrusting of this department because, again, we have a lot of good people doing a lot of good work every day. But these incidents are also troubling for us as a department because we just can't go on with this kind of behavior.
Medizadeh did not provide comment as to when the ACERT investigation would be completed. An Edmonton man wanted in connection with human trafficking has been arrested. Alert, along with Edmonton police, issued an Alberta-wide warrant for 37-year-old Felicien Mufuda. They picked him up Wednesday afternoon in the Empire Park neighborhood in Edmonton. The investigation began after one of Mufuta's victims came forward saying she was being forced to work in the sex trade and was sexually assaulted by the accused. Alert believes there may be more victims and is encouraging others to come forward. The next phase of Alberta's COVID-19 immunization program has begun. The province says as of 11 a.m. on Wednesday, 10,000 Albertans have been booked to receive the Covishield AstraZeneca vaccine. Albertans born in 1957 will also be able to book an appointment for a shot online or by calling HealthLink at 811. Any First Nations, Métis, and Inuit born in 1972 will also be able to book themselves in to be immunized. There's been a lot of talk in Canada that Canadians should get vaccine passports or paperwork to prove that you've had your COVID-19 vaccine shot. Some industry leaders, including those who run our airlines, think this is a pretty good idea. Political reporter Brian Lilly says many are on board with this premise, but surprisingly, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is not.
The airline industries would be interested in this. The tourism industries are interested in this because they've been decimated by COVID-19 and they want people to be able to travel. The Prime Minister rightly says that he has some concerns around human rights, around privacy, around equity on this front. The idea that, it is in many ways a pay-per-please situation. That's not how we normally operate in Canada.
Mr. Lilly will also have details later in our newscast about what areas the Conservatives need to improve upon if they hope to beat the Liberals in the next election. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau described the Canadian Forces' first female Vice Chief of Defence Staff, Lieutenant General Frances Allen, as a very strong woman. He also promised more action earlier today on tackling sexual misconduct in the military.
I am very pleased to see a strong woman in the Vice Chief position for the first time in Canada's history. And obviously, the tasks of everyone in senior leadership in our military is to move forward on ending the challenges of harassment and discrimination in the military and in other systems, as well as ensuring that anyone who comes forward to share stories or allegations is given the support and resources that they need.
A small group of people gathered in their cars and showed up outside of our studios here in Lethbridge on Wednesday, demanding help from Ottawa. They want the Canadian government to intervene and put international pressure on Sudan and Egypt to back off and respect Ethiopia's natural share of the Nile River, which they say is a source of life for their country.
Would like the Canadian government to involve, especially with the humanitarian aid in the northern region, and support cooperatively with the Ethiopian government to bring peace and stability in the region of Ethiopia, especially in the eastern part of Africa. There's going to be a huge problem going to happen because Sudan is going to start fighting with Ethiopia because of the dam. There was a dam built, Ethiopia is building a dam. Because of that dam, Sudan wants to fight. And again, Egypt wants to fight again with Ethiopia. And now Ethiopia, it has its own internal problems because of the northern part of the country. So Canada, we want the Canadian government to be involved, working closely with the Ethiopian government and bring peace and stability to that region.
Alberta Health Services has notified students and staff at Winston Churchill High School in Lethbridge that they've identified a 5th case of COVID-19 at the school. This places the school on outbreak status. The medical officer of health has launched an investigation. Officials are trying to determine who may have been exposed at the school during the infectious period. Close contacts will be notified and instructed to quarantine for 14 days. The school schedule will proceed as normal on Thursday. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this is going to be a tax season like no other. BCN's Loris Alexander spoke with a local accountant about what you can expect when filing your taxes this year.
There are 3 things they're going to notice that's very different compared to years past. First of all, for the 2020 income taxes, the deadline has not been removed yet.
Despite this being a more complex tax season, the Canada Revenue Agency has not extended the tax filing deadline. The due date is still April 30th for most Canadians and June 15th for self-employed people.
From day one when CERB was announced, the government made it very clear that those were taxable benefits. So for an individual taxpayer who is receiving CERB benefits, they're going to get a form called a T4E issued by the federal government, which has to be declared for their income tax because they're going to pay income taxes on those monies that they've received. The second major change is for anyone who was employed in an office setting and they had to work from home. The government is offering a tax credit for those particular ones because they had to work at home instead of going to the office like they were used to because of COVID-19. And then the third major change that has affected a lot of Canadians is the receipt of any type of emergency response benefits such as the CERB payment. The government is giving taxpayers who owe income tax on that money up until April 30th of 2022 to pay it off with no interest or penalties.
For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
If you drive through downtown Lethbridge, you'll notice the historical Oliver Block building on 5th Street. The building was constructed in the early 1900s, but was in disrepair and stood vacant until 2016. As Micah Quinn explains now, a local business owner purchased the building and decided to restore the Oliver Block back to its original glory.
Hunter Hagee is the owner of the King of Trade in Lethbridge, and he says that he watched every day across the street as the Oliver Block building was starting to empty out and fall apart.
And my wife and I talked about it and decided, let's do something about it. Let's fix this place. Let's save it. It was set for demolition. It was going to become a parking lot. And the problem with that is they don't build 120-year-old buildings every day. And this is a really big part of our history of our city.
With over 100 years of history within the walls of the Oliver Block, the building began with humble beginnings in the city of Lethbridge.
It started out as a blacksmith shop and went from there. It was our courthouse for a while and a movie theater, lots of neat things. Upstairs here, we think about us being environmentally friendly nowadays, but if you look, there's no lights on right now. This is all just natural sunlight upstairs. You could work in your office without even a light on.
All of the businesses inside of the Oliver Block are local.
We have 13 commercial ventures. The second store is professional services, and the main floor is retail. And we also have 3 residences in the building, so there's three different apartments.
Hagee says that all of the credit for the restoration of the Oliver Block shouldn't go directly to him. He says that there were hundreds of people in Lethbridge with the work of City Council and the Lethbridge Historical Society that helped in making the Oliver Block building what it is today.
I think we have a great building. This building's not going anywhere. And in 120 years from now, it's going to be here. And that's what is really important.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The Helen Schuler Nature Center remains closed to the public, but program coordinators still want to give parents options for the upcoming spring break. They can only take 10 children for their Kids and Coolies Day Camp running from April 6th through the 9th. But starting March 29th, the center has an outdoor scavenger hunt prepared. It's likely that parents are looking for any opportunity to get out of the house.
Borrow a bag from the Lethbridge Public Library, and in the bag there's a book, activity cards, and a map, and a few materials to do the activities with, and suggestions for where you could do the activities. So the idea is you take the bag, borrow it from the library for a week, and you can take the materials with you on a bit of a walk in the city in different neighborhood parks or down in the River Valley. You can read the book. It's called Picture a Tree by Barbara Reed. It's a wonderful, wonderful children's book. And then we have different activities that we've created to go along with the book itself.
The Story Walk Around Toolkit will be available from March 29th until the end of April. With no fans in the stands for sporting events because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, local teams need to find creative ways to generate revenue. Online 50-50 draws have become very popular. The Lethbridge Bulls launched quarterly draws, and the most recent winner took home $5,700. Bulls General Manager Kevin Kavami says people should support as many local fundraisers as they can.
We're encouraging them to support all the 50-50s if they have the ability to do so. You can throw a few bucks here, a few bucks there. I imagine a lot of them miss the ball games and miss the opportunity to purchase them at the ball games. And same with the hockey games. I mean, it would be great to go to a hockey game and buy some 50-50s. Hopefully that's not very far away when we can do that again. But here's just another avenue. Optimistic in some capacity that we'll have this summer at Spitz Stadium. So we'll get back to the old-fashioned 50-50s where you sell in person, or it'll probably be some kind of virtual thing too, where you can just go up to a machine and buy tickets. But one way or another, we'll have them.
The draw will be held on Facebook Live on March 31st, and bullsbaseball.com is where you can purchase tickets. Hog farmers in Alberta affected by the temporary closure of the Olymel pork plant in Red Deer due to the COVID-19 outbreak will be receiving some financial help. Both the federal and Alberta governments have earmarked $4 million through a grant called the Canada-Alberta Hog Recovery Initiative. Hundreds of active coronavirus cases were linked to the facility, forcing it to shut down on February the 15th. It resumed operations last Thursday. Producers with market-ready hogs intended for processing February 8th through March 31st that were held back from shipping due to reduced processing are eligible to apply for the program. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says his province is on its way out of the COVID-19 pandemic. The province lifted a ban Tuesday on household visits. Places of worship will once again be allowed to hold larger services beginning on March 19th. That'll be just in time for Easter. The new measure will allow up to 150 people or 30% capacity, whichever is less. Moe says as the coronavirus numbers continue to drop, more restrictions will be lifted.
Today, our 7-day average for new cases is 141. That's the lowest level in nearly 4 months. And that's down 60% from the peak that we experienced in January. Hospitalizations remain stable at 139. With our vaccination program picking up steam and our case numbers and our hospitalization numbers continuing to stabilize, we can begin to cautiously relax some of the public health orders that we have in place.
Now, the move came as the province did report some community spread of COVID-19 variants and an increase in cases in the Regina area. The union representing electrical workers at Manitoba Hydro says its members are on strike. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers met with Manitoba Hydro on Tuesday and rejected its latest offer. The union represents around 2,300 hydro workers, including employees in generation, transmission, and distribution. Manitoba Hydro says it has a contingency plan to ensure it can continue to provide its essential service to customers and maintain public safety around its facilities. We had gusty winds in our region here in southwestern Alberta and warmer temperatures. In fact, an even warmer trend is on the way. Full weather details are coming up. We had wind gusts up to 60 kilometers an hour in many regions of southwestern Alberta again today. Now, the Chinook winds also brought us some warmer temperatures. Jeanette Roche is here now with a full look at the weather picture. Jeanette, things will be improving even more later this week, but in the short term, there's a slight chance we may see more of the white stuff.
Yeah, slight chance of flurries this evening, and hell, it is going to get quite a bit chillier before things do warm up for that weekend. As we saw late this afternoon, a temperature dropped into the minuses, and with the wind chill making it feel more like minus 11. So we had that high of 5 today, but with that temperature drop late in the afternoon, it's gotten chilly, and our overnight low minus 13, feeling colder with the wind chill as we wake up tomorrow. With that slight chance of flurries overnight into tomorrow, though, it is going to clear up. Sunshine for Thursday, high of 7 degrees before we get into the teens for the weekend. Look at that temperature on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. 13 on Friday and 14 for both Saturday and Sunday. Under lovely sunny skies, so it should be a beautiful weekend before we see that chance of flurries again creep up on Monday. 30% chance on Monday with a high of 0, 40% chance of flurries overnight Monday, and into Tuesday another 30% chance of snow with a high of 2 degrees. So our temperature is a little bit all over the place, kind of a mixed bag this week, partially underneath this average low and sometimes way above. So average high for this time of year, 5 degrees, minus 8 the average low. 17 was our high temperature in 1981, and in 1951 we had our chilliest day, which was minus 36. Sun rose this morning at 6:55 a.m. Sunset this evening will be at 6:28 p.m. So let's take a look at what's happening on the West Coast. After so much wind, finally Victoria and Vancouver, that's kind of behind them now. 11 degrees the high in Victoria, 12 for Vancouver. Lots of sunshine there. Overnight tonight, both Calgary and Edmonton experiencing snow, but not tomorrow. Lots of sunshine tomorrow. Edmonton's high 3 degrees and a high of 4 degrees in Calgary, with light winds up to 20 kilometers per hour as well. Now, in the rest of the prairies here, Saskatoon looking at minus 5, same thing for Regina, feeling much chillier with the wind chill into the minus teens and 20s early in the morning. Same thing for Winnipeg. Winnipeg also experiencing quite a bit of wind. Tomorrow, wind gusts up to 60 kilometers per hour with a high of minus 4 tomorrow. Now, in Toronto, showers throughout the day. Tomorrow, 19 is the high. Ottawa will see a 70% chance of showers tomorrow. 12 degrees is their high there. 11 degrees in Montreal with a chance of showers as well. As we look further east, Fredericton's high, 9 degrees, 11 degrees in Halifax, and 8 in Charlottetown. And 3 degrees expected to be the high here in St. John's, Newfoundland, with a mix of sun and cloud, up to 60-kilometer wind gusts, though. So there you have it. That's your forecast.
The Bank of Canada kept its key interest rate target on hold at 0.25%. The bank says uncertainty about the path of the pandemic was a key factor in holding the rate steady. The bank is now forecasting economic growth in the first 3 months of this year. That is an upgrade from its forecast in January of the first quarter contraction. But it says concerns over new variants of COVID-19 are muddying longer-term economic outlooks, including how long it will take for the labour market to recover. Alberta's finance minister says taxpayers' exposure to the cancelled Keystone XL pipeline won't be much more than the $1.3 billion already spent. But Travis Taves did not provide specifics on the final amount when speaking to a budget review committee. The province had committed $1.5 billion to the project and $6 billion more in loan guarantees before newly elected U.S. President Joe Biden canceled its permit shortly after he was sworn in. BuzzFeed says it has laid off 45 reporters, editors, and producers from the newly acquired HuffPost. The media outlet also said that HuffPost executive editor Hilary Fry resigned over the layoffs. The dismissals come 3 weeks after BuzzFeed acquired HuffPost from Verizon Media. BuzzFeed CEO Jonah Peretti told employees in a meeting announcing the layoffs that HuffPost lost $20 million last year and was on track to do the same this year, and that such losses could not be sustained. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 90 points on the day to finish at 18,690. The Dow was up 464 points to 32,297. The S&P 500 was up 23 points to 3899. And the NASDAQ was down 4 points today to 13,069. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 68 cents to 64.69 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was up 3 cents to 2.69 U.S. Gold was even at 17.2672 U.S. an ounce, and silver was down a cent to 26.20 U.S. an ounce. Wheat is at $308 per metric ton, barley's at $319, canola's at $7.76, and corn is at $344 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 88 cents to $118.78, feeder cattle were down 95 cents to $136.20, and lean hogs were up 43 cents to $88.78. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 79.25 U.S. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, hog farmers in Alberta affected by the temporary closure of the Ollie Mill pork plant in Red Deer due to the COVID-19 outbreak will be receiving some much-needed financial help. Both the federal and Alberta governments have earmarked $4 million through a grant called the Canada-Alberta Hog Recovery Initiative. Hundreds of active coronavirus cases were linked to the facility, forcing it to shut down on February the 15th. It resumed operations last Thursday. Would you be open to the idea of getting a vaccine passport, proving that you've been immunized against the novel coronavirus? Many industry leaders, including those in the airline industry, are all for the idea, but surprisingly, our Prime Minister is not. Political reporter Brian Lilly has the details from Toronto in just a second. Even though many Canadians are refusing to take the vaccines, they're arriving in large shipments across the country. To talk about this in more detail is political reporter Brian Lilly with the Toronto Sun. Now, Brian, there's some controversy over changes provinces are making over how long between doses. Some doctors are calling it human experimentation.
Yeah, and I think those words are pretty strong. They may be accurate, but it's taking it to the nth degree, let's say. Provinces are kind of in a bind because even though we are getting a pile of doses, and we'll talk about how many in a minute, but the simple fact is we're not getting sufficient enough doses to vaccinate the population as quickly as they want, because the truth is most people do want the vaccine, and those numbers go up every single time there's a poll. You look at the uptake rate when any of the provinces went into long-term care homes, and it's over 90%. So yeah, people want the vaccine because they want to get back to normal. That's what this is all about. Let me get back to normal. Let me have my old life back. And so the provinces said, fine, you know what? We think we can extend the interval from 21 days, which is what it's supposed to be for Pfizer, 28 days for Moderna, and up to 12 weeks for AstraZeneca for their second dose. And they said, we'll take it out to 16 weeks or 4 months. Well, that means that you can get a lot more needles into a lot more people's arms in that time period. In fact, here in Ontario, they're talking about having everyone that wants a shot, every adult that wants one, their first dose by June 20th instead of sometime in September. And then they go around and they do the second dose. But that's leaving an awful lot of people worried that it's not following manufacturers' instructions. There are doctors speaking out, there are individual citizens speaking out saying this isn't right. It's not my favorite thing in the world to do, but given the limited supply that Canada has access to, I fully understand why the provinces are doing it, and they're now doing it with the blessing of the federal government, the blessing of Health Canada, and the blessing of the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. So it's going ahead, even though there are some people saying we shouldn't be doing it this way.
Now, as a country, Canada's only received around 3 million doses total since around mid-December, but now we're receiving more than 1 million a week. Brian, let me ask you something. Would this not overwhelm the system?
Let's hope not. Now, it's 1 million this week, and then it goes down again next week, comes up a bit slightly the week after that, and then stays fairly steady. And the reason it's over 1 million this week is that we're getting 500,000 AstraZeneca doses. Well, they actually arrived last week, but the provinces aren't getting them until this week. So, Ontario, for example, is going to start in pharmacies as of Friday with AstraZeneca. Alberta is going the pharmacy route, so is Quebec, although they don't start theirs till next week. So the provinces are just getting them now, even though they've been in the country for a week. We're also getting just shy of 500,000 Pfizer doses, and then about, 160,000 for the whole country Moderna. And those numbers are going to be going up, but Moderna comes every 3 weeks. So there's just like a glut all at once. The way it's going to be used, it will be measured out. I can tell you that despite claims by some people that provinces are failing and leaving doses in freezers, those are people that look at how much of the doses delivered the provinces have used the day after a big delivery. You look at Alberta and it's regularly well over 90% by the time the next delivery shows up. Ontario is always either just over 90% or bumping up against 90%. That's effectively doing just-in-time delivery, right? You're getting your next doses arriving as you're using up the last one. So, speaking to various provincial governments and how they're going to be doing this, I have faith that this will work. Everyone has to remember that there isn't a big parade, there isn't all the attention paid to it, but provinces do this every single year with the flu vaccine. Ontario just did 6 million doses, and people barely batted an eye. There was a couple of complaints in the first week that I couldn't get my shot when I wanted it, and then after that, it went away. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, every province does the same thing. So yeah, they're going to be able to handle it.
Government and business leaders are now talking about vaccine passports as a way to let vaccinated people travel a little more freely. Now, that's concerned many people, including our very own Prime Minister. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I've heard Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu talk about it. I've heard provincial health ministers and officials talk about it, and business leaders as well, because here's the idea. We're all going to get some proof of vaccination, right? You have to have it so that if you need a second shot, you can say, well, yeah, I got my first shot of this type of vaccine on this date. Well, can that be used as a vaccine passport of sorts? Can you use that to say, I've been vaccinated, let me travel without restriction? The airline industries would be interested in this. The tourism industries are interested in this because they've been decimated by COVID-19 and they want people to be able to travel. The Prime Minister rightly says that he has some concerns around human rights, around privacy, around equity on this front. The idea that, it is in many ways a pay-per-please situation. That's not how we normally operate in Canada. What may happen, though, is that in order to travel to other countries, you will need to show your proof of vaccination. That already happens in some countries for a number of diseases that we don't have here. And if you're traveling, you're told before you leave, you must have these shots and proof of them to get in. That may happen here. I'm not sure which way federal and provincial governments in this country will go on whether you need to have one for moving around. But again, don't be surprised if you try and go to another country when this is all over and they say, have you had your COVID-19 vaccination? And if you can't provide proof, they may not let you in. Just like if you go to Thailand right now, you have to show that you've received a bunch of shots for various things that we don't normally have in this country, but that they are very concerned about.
Brian, many business owners I've spoken with here in southern Alberta are simply tired of the lockdowns and wearing masks. But you say a recent poll suggests that there's still widespread support for government mask mandates across 3 countries.
Yeah, this is a Meru Blue poll, one of the big polling companies that has developed over the last several years, international firm. And they polled in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and here in Canada. And yeah, they found more than 90% of people saying that they wear masks. Now, we may not all love it, but more than 90% of people wear masks on a regular basis, either all the time or most of the time. It was 97% in Canada, 96% in the UK, and 94% in the United States. 2% of people say they refuse to wear masks in Canada and the UK, and only 3% in the United States. And by the way, Alberta is not the capital of saying I refuse to wear a mask in Canada. That would be Quebec. Quebec, the western United States and the northeast of England. And even there, the highest percentage of people saying they refuse is 7% in the western US states. So yeah, most people are saying, fine, may not like it, but I'm going to wear it. As for whether governments went far enough in mandating masks, it's about 52% in the UK say they didn't go far enough. In the US, 40% say they didn't go far enough. And here in Canada, it's only 33%. Most in Canada say they got it about right. Very few people think that the government did big overreach on this. So, there is perhaps a reason why governments continue to hold the policies they do. Often, the public actually wants more than what the government's doing in terms of lockdowns and restrictions.
Brian, some political pundits are saying if the Conservatives are really hoping to win the next election, federal election, they really have to attack the Liberals on their economic record. But a new poll by both Bloomberg and Nano says the Tories have a little bit of ground to make up in that area.
Yeah, this is not a good news poll for the Conservatives when you've got a third of the population saying that the Liberals under Justin Trudeau are best placed to deal with the economy, and only 24% say Erin O'Toole and the Conservatives are. That's a bad news sign. That tells you where you're weak as a Conservative, because Conservatives normally lead on that question, normally lead by a wide margin. You'll get, the standard answer. People will, on these questions, go across party lines. They may vote for one party, and they might be a Liberal, and you'll ask them, well, who's better on the economy? Oh, the Conservatives. And you ask a Conservative, who's better on healthcare? Well, the Liberals. That sort of thing happens all the time. But you've only got a quarter of Canadians saying the Conservatives can do it. That's their ballot box question. By the way, the second place answer was none of them at 29%. But interesting thing how we've talked about the gender divide before, how men, in every poll, men tend to favor the Conservatives by a pretty decent margin. And women prefer the Liberals. On this one, even, women said, 35% of women said Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are best on the economy. Only 15% of them said the same about Erin O'Toole and the Liberals. So they really do have to find a way to sell their message to women if they want to vote. It can be done. The Conservatives have led with women before. That's what brought you the 2008 and 2011 Conservative victories. They need to do it again if they want to win.
There's a lot of chatter about Erin O'Toole's leadership ahead of the Conservative convention, but now all of the talk has turned to abortion once again, since O'Toole has come out saying he's pro-choice once again. Where does that leave social conservatives, Brian?
Well, there's a strange fight going on, and you always have to remember that there are factions within the social conservative movement as well. There are groups like Right Now in Calgary, which take a let's find candidates that we can work with and that are aligned with our values and help get them elected. And then you've got groups like Campaign Life Coalition who are much more strident. And look, some factions of the SOCON movement have yelled at me in the past for supporting bills that were incremental on issues of life. Because their view is it's all or nothing. Well, all or nothing is not going to win. So there's a bit of a fight going on behind the scenes among different factions of the social conservative movement to try and push things onto the agenda that didn't make it. And that includes Campaign Life Coalition trying to change the party constitution to make the party explicitly pro-life. The party doesn't want to go there. They haven't gone there in the past. Aaron O'Toole was asked on Tuesday, what's your stance? And that's why he came out saying he's pro-choice. The Conservatives always have to make sure that social conservatives feel welcomed within their party, but they also can't have it appear that the harshest elements of the social conservative movement are running the show. If you do that, then you can kiss goodbye to an awful lot of seats the Conservatives hold now and the ability to win. Doesn't mean you can't have social conservatives in prominent positions. Leslyn Lewis attracted an awful lot of support from people that were not SoCons because of how she presented her argument, how she presented herself. And that matters a great deal. So, like I said, there's a fight within the party, and then there's a fight within social conservative factions in the party. And all of that's going on in the background leading up to the March 18th convention.
Brian, there are many people who believe that the Liberals have gone so far to the left, they've passed the NDP way on the left, and the Conservatives have also moved to the left. They're more of a centrist party now here in Canada. That only leaves Maxime Bernier's PPC party as the true right-leaning party. So do you think maybe more social conservatives would go to the PPC and prop up Maxime Bernier?
I don't see that happening. Maxime Bernier is a libertarian. I've interviewed Max many times. He's always open and welcoming to social conservatives, but he's not one of them. And in the last election, the PPC did attract an awful lot of the types of people running in the operations in the background that new fringe parties attract. They attract fringe element people. And that got them into trouble with some of the things that the people stood for, believed, or had posted in the past. So I don't see Maxime Bernier growing. The big threat to the Conservatives from the right is the Maverick Party. We'll have to see how that goes. The Buffalo Party did well in Saskatchewan's election. We'll see what happens with the Maverick Party. It's headed up by Jay Hill. I've talked to other former Conservative MPs, people who sat in Parliament for years under the Conservative banner, who say, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about voting for them. So I think that's the bigger threat rather than Maxime Bernier and the PPC.
I've talked to Jay Hill, and he does make a lot of sense with a lot of points that he brings up, especially when it comes to equalization payments. Brian, much of the world is still talking about the Oprah Winfrey interview with Harry and Meghan. Most are talking about it except for the Trudeau Liberals. PM Trudeau says, now's not the time to break with a monarchy in England.
Yeah, look, he had to dance as he was giving that answer, but his Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, was asked straight up, so what are your thoughts on the interview? And he was like, I did not watch the interview. The government will not be commenting on the interview. It's the right position for them to take. It's a no-win situation. You either come out strongly defending the monarchy or you just say nothing. And strongly defending the monarchy when there's been talk of racism, vague allegations of racism, that may not sit well with a lot of people. So, the PM just said, now's not the time. And then in a follow-up question was asked, well, you're always talking about getting rid of symbols of colonialism. And I thought he gave a good answer. I'm not sure if he believes the answer he gave because it sounds like something I might say, but he said, look, even Parliament that we're, sitting across the street from is a symbol of a system that came to us and was colonial. But just because there were mistakes in the past doesn't mean you throw everything out. Unfortunately, he has done that on occasion. But on this answer, he gave the right one. He said, you look to the past, you learn from the past, you learn from the mistakes, you change and you move on. So thankfully, he's not ready to say he wants to break with the monarchy. A couple of weeks ago, there was an interesting Ipsos poll saying once Queen Elizabeth passes on, support for the monarchy will drop tremendously. And I have to say, I do believe that.
One of our regular contributors, political columnist, Brian Lilly, joining me once again from Toronto. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Hal.
Many of us rely on our vehicles to get to work, to school, to shop, etc. And when it breaks down, it can be an expensive surprise. Today, we want to talk about how to properly maintain a vehicle and hopefully avoid some of these nasty surprises. Today's guest is Sean Hammond. He's the owner of Big L's Auto Repair right here in Lethbridge, and you're joining me from your shop via Zoom. So welcome to BCN, Sean.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So how often do you see people come in with expensive vehicle repairs that could have been prevented with proper maintenance? That's basically what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so proper maintenance is really important when you're talking about the longevity of your vehicle. Oil changes are the biggest part of that, and that's what we see the most. People who go too long on an oil change and causes engine failures and other bad stuff.
Okay, so let's talk about oil changes a little bit. So most of the time when people get oil changes, they get those little stickers that they put up in the windshield there. So are you finding that people are just ignoring that little sign that says when your next oil change should be, or do they lose the stickers, or how does that work?
Sometimes the stickers fall off. Lots of people rely on their car's vehicle maintenance reminder to tell them when they should change their oil as well. So they ignore the sticker because they have a light that comes on that tells them when to change it.
Yeah, and a lot of times those stickers are kind of like the lower mark too. You can sometimes go a lot further than what the sticker says. You advise that though?
I don't. We always say you should change your oil more regularly than less regularly. So I mean, if you're pushing it to the limit every time, that can definitely cause problems in the long run. That being said, manufacturers that build the cars, they know when you should be changing your oil. So if you go by the light, just make sure that as soon as the light comes on, you're going to get your oil changed.
Interesting. Okay, so should we be using regular oil or synthetic oil? I know some of the more expensive German cars, the luxury cars, definitely advise for those synthetic oils, don't they?
Well, a lot of cars actually now are going to synthetic oil. Most car manufacturers have gone to completely synthetic. GM has been doing it for years. But Dodge and Toyota and all those other guys, they are also headed that direction as well. So they don't really give you an option not to use synthetic.
Wow. Now, isn't it quite a bit more expensive than the regular oil?
It's come down in price quite a bit. And a synthetic oil change will probably cost you about $15 or $20 more than a regular oil change. But they're also extending the life of those oil changes as well, so you can go longer on your money.
Yes, that's true. Like I know, like if you have a Mercedes, you might only need one oil change a year, but it'll cost like $200 or something. Is that right?
Yeah. So not from us. There are some major car manufacturers, especially the higher end guys, where the oil is very specific and very special, and they get a little bit more expensive. Toyota is actually just rolled out a new type of oil that they're using in their cars, and it is quite expensive to use.
Oh, yikes. Good to know if you're on the market looking for a Toyota. Any specific kind of Toyota or just any Toyota, the newer ones?
We had one in the other day. It was a 2019 Camry, and it used a very specialized oil that we had never even heard of until the car had come in. But it was a 0 weight, 16 weight motor oil.
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. So let's switch gears. Let's talk about tires. It's not uncommon, especially now that it's winter, we're turning into spring. So it's not uncommon to get those slow leaks, right, in the tire, particularly when in the wintertime. So the weather's going constantly from cold to mild, back to cold, back to mild. I know that Sean, I'm constantly getting that low tire pressure alert going off in my car. And then you end up driving on a half flat tire. So what kinds of issues can this cause? Is it a big safety issue?
So yes, absolutely. So tires are your only point of contact from your car to the road. So we think that they're one of the most important things on your car. So when you have low tire life, you can actually reduce your gas mileage. You can reduce your safety because you want to get maximum contact out of those tires all the time. So all car manufacturers have a recommended pressure that you should run your tires at, and that's where you should always try and keep your tires at. That being said, in the winter, yes, tire pressures do fluctuate, especially in Southern Alberta, where we can go from -20 to +20 in a couple of days. So that definitely throws a wrench into things, so to speak. So definitely just keep an eye on your tire pressures. You should always have a tire pressure gauge in your car so that you can check them if one is low.
Okay, so is it worth it to get winter tires?
The people who say that winter tires don't make a difference have never had winter tires, we often find. So, yes, we do believe that winter tires are a good thing. Us and all of our staff, we all run winter tires in the winter and summer tires in the summer. Tire technology has actually come a long way. You can actually get something called all-weather tires now, and they are a little bit more grippy in the winter, but they do wear better in the summer, so you don't burn them off like winter tires do.
Okay, so that's all weather as opposed to
All season.
all season, right? Okay, interesting. So, how do you know when it's time to get new tires, and how often should you rotate them?
Most car manufacturers say every other oil change you should be rotating your tires. Quite often, we don't see the benefit in that every time, but whenever we have somebody's car who we regularly maintain, we check their tires every time they do an oil change, so that we can tell them when it's time to rotate their tires or not. Usually works out to about every third or fourth oil change.
Okay, let's talk about battery. So, what do we need to know to take care of our battery? Is the cold weather really bad on the battery? I'm really bad for plugging my car in because I have a brand new battery, and so it usually starts. But is it bad on the battery to make it start in -30 weather if you haven't plugged it in?
So that's a common misconception, actually. When you plug in your car, you're not actually plugging in your battery.
Correct.
You're
Yeah.
plugging in a heater that keeps your engine warm, so that just keeps your engine warm, not your battery. So when you turn your car over, there's less strain on the battery. Instead of trying to turn over an ice block, you're turning over a warmer engine so that it turns over easier, which is better for your battery in the long run. But the best thing that you can do for your battery is not let it sit in the cold for days or weeks on end. Start your car every other day at least and keep that charged.
Yeah, for sure. So, when do we need to get a new battery?
Most batteries last between 5 and 6 years. That being said, sometimes when we have a really nasty cold winter, sometimes that will decrease the life of a battery, but most batteries have some kind of warranty for 5 or 6 years.
Nice. So, and then of course, sometimes it might not be your battery that's giving you the issue. So, we may have an alternator problem, right? So, what can you tell us about that?
So alternators are a system in your car that is designed to keep your battery charged when it's running. Alternators that are overcharging or undercharging will definitely decrease the life of your battery. Usually you will get a little red light that looks like a battery pop up on your dash saying that something is wrong. Don't ever ignore that. It's really important.
Yeah, interesting. As are all of these the oil, the
Yes.
brakes, everything, right? So, what about air filters? It sounds like a minor thing, but can this cause serious problems if it doesn't get replaced regularly?
Not serious problems. I mean, we have seen some strange things, but air filters that are dirty will definitely give you reduced gas mileage. They will also give you reduced engine performance.
Okay. Now, on your website blog, you have an article about the importance of getting your belts checked, especially your timing belt. Can you explain why this is key?
Sure. So drive belts, serpentine belts, and other kinds of belts, other than your timing belt, they drive your alternator. Lots of times they'll drive a water pump or a power steering pump. So if they break, then you lose that stuff. Serpentine belts tend to run all of that stuff off of one belt. So if your belt goes, then all of a sudden your vehicle's very hard to steer. It's not charging properly. It's not cooling the engine off properly. It's bad. Timing belts, however, are even more important. They need to be changed by your vehicle's recommendation, manufactured recommendation, usually around every 100 to 150,000 kilometers. They are what keep your engine in time so that everything is working together. When they break, most new cars, they call them interference engines. That means if your timing belt breaks, you're going to start bending valves and damaging pistons and doing major internal damage in your engine. So ignoring that can be detrimental to the life of your vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. I had that happen to me years and years ago, back when I was young with my first car. And it was not good. It was a bad, tough lesson to learn about timing belts for
Yeah,
sure.
and that's usually how people learn those hard lessons,
Yeah.
is that you have one break. And timing belts, if you do them when you're supposed to do them, they might cost you from $400 to $800. If they break, it's going to cost you between $4,000 and $7,000, right? So I mean, it's a big hit, but it's better than replacing your motor.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so spark plugs, they can last a lot longer than they used to, but this is a key thing, right, for the car, the spark plug.
Yes, absolutely. So spark plugs are one of those things that have really come a long way technology wise. Spark plugs used to have to be changed every 40 to 50,000 kilometers, and now they can go up to 180 to 200,000 kilometers before they need to be changed, which is great for the consumer because it's not something they have to worry about as much. But when they do start to go, they will cause lots of problems. Your engine doesn't run properly, fuel mileage goes to crap, it can leave you stranded on the side of the road.
Yeah, for sure. So how about brakes? This is one thing that we need to keep an eye on. How do you know when it's time to get some brake work done? Or to top up the brake fluid too, for that matter.
Well, typically brake fluid is only ever low unless if you have a leak or if your brakes are worn out. So if your brake fluid is low, it's always a good idea to have a look at the actual brake pads and see if they're worn out. If they're still good, then you might want to start having a mechanic look at some other issues. Brakes are obviously very important. They're what stop you. Stopping is important. So brake pads that are starting to wear out will usually start to make some noise. It usually starts with a light squeal, and then the squeal will get heavier. And then if you let it go too far and you ignore that and just keep turning up your radio, then you start getting grinding and starts doing more damage to other systems.
That's when you get that knocking sound, right?
Yeah, usually it's a really loud scraping sound, and it
Right.
sounds like you're dragging your muffler behind you.
Oh, yikes. Let's avoid that, please, at all costs.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, spring is just around the corner. Of course, that means it'll be summer soon. So every summer, of course, we see vehicles on the side of the road with overheated engines. So how can we prevent that sort of thing from happening? And usually it's a transmission problem, isn't it?
Actually, no. Usually, if you see somebody who's on the side of the road with their hood up, usually it's because of another mechanical failure. Transmissions, again, have come a really long way. Same with transmission fluids. You don't have to change them as often. That being said, there's a multitude of reasons why you could get stuck on the side of the road in the summer. Cars are full of technology and computers now, and we all know how technology works. Sometimes when it works, it's great. When it doesn't, it is not great at all. So we don't see as many overheated cars anymore because the systems are so efficient. But you should always check your fluids once a month, check to make sure your coolant is topped up, check to make sure your oil is topped up, power steering fluid. Even power steering fluid is going by the wayside. Most cars have electronic power steering now, so they don't take fluid. It's all driven by an electronic motor. But if that fails, that can also cause you all kinds of problems.
And there's also different kinds of transmissions, right? There's a CV transmission and that. So what's the difference between that and the regular kind of transmission?
Automatic transmissions traditionally had a series of gears inside, and you'd switch from first gear to second gear to third gear. CVT transmissions do not have gears in them anymore. They're basically two opposing cones, and they work kind of like the gears on your bike do. When you get bigger gears, then you get more resistance, but you get more speed, and vice versa. So basically, CVT transmissions work kind of like that, without the actual physical gear shift.
Oh gosh, yeah. Very technical. So, Sean, what advice do you have for someone who's shopping for a good mechanic? What kinds of things should people be looking for or asking about?
I always say that you should do some homework, look into the shop, call the shop, ask for a quote about something, talk to the staff. We do digital inspection for our customers. So when our customers come in and they are looking to get something diagnosed or fixed, or even just an oil change, We send them, we do a digital inspection report that actually gets texted to their phone. And if we see something wrong, we can actually show them with pictures or videos what exactly we see in the shop so that everything's transparent. They can see what we see. We're not calling stuff just for fun. This is what's wrong. This is why it's wrong. We can send educational videos along with that on how those systems work, so that people know exactly what they're getting into and why it's important.
Oh, I love that idea, bringing in some technology there.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like we are out of time, but thanks so much for your expertise, Sean. We really appreciate having you on our show today. Sean Hammond is the owner of Big Al's Auto Repair here in Lethbridge.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.